Welcome to the Make Space for Growth podcast. My name is Sarah Vicente and I'm your host. I'm a corporate strategist, problem solver, social entrepreneur, writer, mom of two, and passionate for growth, at home, in business, or in my community. If you're new to this podcast, welcome. I hope you enjoy our conversation today. If you're a regular, make sure you hit the subscribe button and do drop us a review. This is season 1 of the Make Space for Growth podcast, Finding Growth in a Crisis. In this season, I have asked amazing women leaders around the world to join me in a fireside chat about how they have dealt with lockdown and the COVID-19 crisis. More importantly, we talk about how they found growth. We will spend some time learning about their businesses and how they have coped or not with it. Quarantine, lockdown, shelter in place, whatever it may have been called in your country. For me, this was an inspiring time. I find crisis can create excellent opportunities for cleansing, decluttering, and finding new avenues. At home and in our business, crisis can make space for growth. Join me for this journey to find out how, because it is time for hope and light. After Milan, London, Lisbon, San Francisco, Singapore, and New York, it is time to go back to Europe. This time, Germany. For episode 7, I have Constanze Walcher. Constanze is the founder and CEO of Glutenfreie Heimat in Berlin, a company that produces and sells organic gluten-free baking mixtures and baked goods. The company started from a recipe her mother, who's a doctor, developed over 12 years. It sells mostly in Germany, but expansion plans are on the way. I will leave it to Constanze to tell you the full story. Previously, Constanze was a VP of product development at Burberry in London, and after having studied fashion design in Florence, she worked at Gucci Group for Alexander McQueen before moving on to Burberry. With the birth of her first son, she decided to move to Berlin, where she founded her business 3 years ago. She now lives in Berlin with her partner and her 3 boys. I can't wait for you to find out what has happened with Constanze and her business in the last 6 months. It is a true story of growth. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Constanze, welcome to the Make Space for Growth podcast, and thank you for accepting my invitation.
Thank you for having me here.
Before we go and talk business, may I ask you, what was your favorite thing to do as a child, and what did you want to be when you grew up?
This is really funny because I love to swim, especially underneath the water. I love the colors. I love to dance and sing, and I always wanted to be an actress. But then soon when I realized, when my mother told me, maybe you have to have a second option because not all the women who want to be an actress are successful, you should have a backup plan. I thought, I think I would like to be a manager. I didn't really know what a manager is, but I understood that it's delegating people and being nicely dressed and going to work. So I thought a manager is a good plan.
That's very cool. So I spoke briefly about what you do in the intro, but can you give us a background on what does your business do and how did you create it?
So I'm producing gluten-free baking mixtures in organic quality, as well as lactose-free or vegan. And I'm producing cookies that aren't vegan, but also lactose-free and gluten-free, of course. This whole thing happened or started because I need to eat gluten-free. And there was nothing really delicious and healthy out there. So this is my main core business.
And Matt, you've told me a funny story, which I think the audience is going to like. So how did it start?
Well, this whole thing started because my mother was the one who originally invented the first bread recipe. And since she used to always cook and bake for us, when she realized that the quality of the grain isn't as good anymore, she started to experiment into gluten-free. At that time, there wasn't really much out there in the market. And after 12 years, she really developed this delicious bread. And when my husband years later came and ate the bread, he was like, can we not make a baking mixture out of this and sell it? Because I'm sure there's lots of other people out there who would enjoy and love that as well and need it as well.
Indeed. So you mentioned to me, you kind of started the business 3 years ago. So can you talk a bit of how it's developed since then, what the different products are that you have now, and a bit where we are in the business.
So 3 years ago, I started to design the packaging myself, experiment, and I had this second kitchen in our house where I was really stirring in the bowl, mixing it and filling it into, at the beginning, into little glass containers, which I thought were really pretty, but actually not practical at all to send out to people. So I learned a lot. My third son was born during that period, so I had to pause it a little bit. And now 2 years ago, I really started the business. I've developed quite a few products from it. So there's not only bread and bread rolls, but there's also pizza mix, cookie mix, pancakes, and recipes online, because we also sell a flour mix and you can make your own cake and lots of other stuff with it.
And so how do you usually sell your products?
So our main business used to be the online store. We didn't do any advertisement at all because there was enough people out there who loved our products, recommended it to other people, so that we always had new customers. On top of that, I started to post on Instagram and Facebook, and now I have about 1,000 followers on Instagram and Facebook, and so these people also became a few customers.
That's organic growth. And I know you're going to tell me that story, how that growth is exploded, but I'm going to reserve that one. So before we go and talk about the last 6 months, what sizes of team do you have and where are they? Are they all close to you or are they spread out?
Yeah, that's a really funny one because we're in the middle of a storm at the moment, or an explosion, I would call it. First, it was just me. Then a very good friend of mine started to help out. And now she's, I would say, like in German, you say my right hand. She's like part-time, but helping me in everything. And then we had a student and 2 other temps working with us. But now we're interviewing every day and we are 10 people now and growing. So it's really exploding.
So that takes us where we want to go. Let's talk about the last 6 months a bit more. You know, COVID-19, and it has still not let go. But let's first talk about the turmoil and then talk about how this changed as well. So when it first happened, when Germany first went on lockdown, what happened to the business? What measures did you have to do?
It started for us already earlier, because when we heard the first news, my husband and I discussed that we should buy loads of raw material, because we thought, okay, people will have to stay home. We could see that in Italy, or first in China, then in Italy. People will order more. They will have to bake and cook at home. So we secured raw material in a huge amount that I've never had ordered before. But I thought it's better to be safe than sorry, which was a very good decision. Because in March, we had such a spike in sales, which was incredible. So not only in the supermarkets, it was empty, but we were never empty. But we had, thankfully secured that raw material, and we were producing a lot and selling a lot. So March was definitely the strongest month in sales. But the crazy situation was that I wasn't in Berlin, because we were planning to go skiing in March. But on the way to go skiing, we stopped in the holiday house of my mother and decided they will probably close the frontier, the skiing area and everything. We should probably hold on for a bit and see what happens. And in fact, that's what happened. So I wasn't there.
But for lockdown, were you in Berlin, or did you end up being locked down in your holiday home?
Yes, we were in the holiday home of my mother, which is in the Black Forest, which was a blessing in that sense, because first I was totally stressed out with having to deal with all these orders and working and not being in Berlin. But then on the other hand, with 3 small boys, it was a blessing, because we went out into the woods every day and nature was around us, and almost nobody else but animals and nature. So that was great.
That's the lucky part. So you were not in Berlin and you had your spike in revenues. And I have to ask, where did you store all these raw materials that you stocked up?
I'm very lucky that my husband owns quite a few real estate in Berlin. So we did have the possibility of storing all that raw material. Yeah, it was all a bit improvised. Even a garage was full with raw material.
And so you were not there, and your team, how many were you at the time, and what happened to the team? Because the team was still in Berlin, I imagine.
Yeah, that's the thing. We were only myself plus 2 other people. And one lady, she was alone with her 2 kids because she separated recently from her husband, and she had to stay at home with the kids. And the third person was luckily a student without kids, and she was mixing all day long. Basically, she was working full stop and mixing, filling the bags for the customers and everything, preparing the orders. And this other lady, she only came to organize DHL pickup, postal pickup, and all that stuff, and invoicing. So she could prepare that from home, would only once a day pass by the factory, drop it off at the post if the post guy didn't pass while anybody was there, because that was also difficult. And so we managed.
That's a lean team. And I mean, a big part of what you're doing is based on having distribution. You mentioned DHL. How did you manage to keep distribution? Because I think we've had that before in the podcast, that Pradi in Singapore, she just couldn't ship anywhere because it was just stopped.
Yeah, we were really lucky. I mean, our core business is still in Germany. So within Germany, actually everything worked. There were only like delays of 2 to 3 days, but people knew that this is the case. So nobody complained. It was working actually really good for us.
So, a lot of people come and talk about how they had to stop certain suppliers and they had to stop certain commitments. It seems like you went the other way around. After the initial stockpiling, did you have to change anything about your supplier relationships, try and get some more? What happened there?
The only problem we incurred was with yeast, but I think everybody who started to bake a bit at home realized that in all stores, supermarkets, online shops, yeast was completely sold out, and that was the same for us. Luckily, we have 2 different suppliers, and we had so much in stock that we made it, but it was really to the day, to the day that we could reorder again. So this was critical, but for the rest, we were fine. We were organized well.
So, Constanze, one of the things that I found amazing that you told me was you had this crisis, you had this spike, and everyone's home and wanting your mixture, but you actually, on top of it, secured a major distribution agreement, and which kind of changes the shape of your business entirely. How did that come about in the middle of, in theory, everything being closed? And then you come up with this agreement and it brings your business to another level.
Conversations already started before Corona, so I would not say it's because of Corona, but I think there's worldwide a huge trend towards gluten-free eating or healthy eating, environmentally friendly living. We don't use any plastic, for example. So I think that there's awareness everywhere, and people are checking what ingredients are in the package before they buy it. So we had these talks already before. There's one big brand in Germany, they're called Alnatura, and it's an organic brand. They are huge, and they were the ones who really pushed forward. And they said to this distributor, listen, I want these products, you have to take them. And because they are so important, the distributor said, yeah, of course, we will take them. No, but besides that, they tested the products, and they were convinced as well, and they were really impressed actually by the quality and how amazingly they taste. So this all went well. They didn't even negotiate any prices. They tried for 1 second, and I told them, guys, it's a really high quality product, so this is the price what you have to pay for it. And they were like, okay, fine. So it was really lucky actually. But I think with this agreement plus Instagram, and I don't know, it's like I believe a lot in energy and attraction and positive thinking, and it's like an explosion, as I mentioned before. So now there's a distributor who is the main distributor for organic products in Poland who contacted me. But so there's a lot going on at the moment.
All right, so you have this distributor after you, and you have 3 people in the business, really. One of them a student, one of them not really able to work at full capacity, and you're using real estate in different places in Berlin to stock up. You certainly have a huge amount of demand. How did you change your infrastructure, your team? You've told me you're hiring. How long did that take, and how did you go about changing it?
Well, at some point we decided that we cannot stay in the Black Forest any longer, so we came back to Berlin. Then towards the end of lockdown, well, I had a dream always as an interim to work really close to where I live, and actually, if possible, in the same building, because we live in a penthouse and the ground floor used to be a shop. I always thought, this would be a really good place to have my factory in, because the school is just down the road, and being a mother of 3 and having to drive around, this would be just perfect in terms of timing. I just have to go down the stairs and come up, and even late in the evening I can still go down and up because it's just in the same building. And I guess it's destiny, but in May, the people who were renting the space said to my husband, "I'm sorry, but we're moving out." And we were like, "Oh, really? What a shame. When are you moving out? June? Oh, we can even make it middle of June. That's perfectly fine." So I moved in.
That was a very quick solution. And so you also increased the team. So what sort of functions have you been hiring? How did you go about suddenly hiring 7 people?
To be honest, with the team, we're still in absolute movement. I mean, it's a crazy moment. Interviewing every day, having to show people how everything works, and it's crazy. So I guess my luck is again that unfortunately there's a lot of people who have lost their jobs due to Corona, but there's also the perfect timing with pupils who have stopped school but haven't had the opportunity yet to start studying. And in production, if you're filling bags and sealing them and packing packages, you don't have to have studied to do that. So I guess this is my luck. So in terms of keeping the production up, I've quickly found quite a lot of people who can do that, thankfully.
So that's it's still in motion.
Yes,
I see. So one part that we've been hearing a lot on the podcast is that customers were also closer than ever. Of course, you have this driver from the distributor, but obviously that's because customers are looking for the product. And in this case, they were home, they had lots of time to spare, and they wanted to be in touch with the brands that mattered. Was this the case for you? Did you see your relationship with your customers change? Did that change how you interact with them?
To be honest, not really, because we're doing a product that, there's quite a few people out there who are celiac or who have other diseases and who definitely need to eat gluten-free. And they're so thankful that I have invented these products and am producing these products, that from the beginning, from day one, I had always amazing feedback and some personal stories as well. It's actually really funny. People who thanked me that they were just before being operated, taking out the stomach or whatever. And luckily to eating my products, they said they didn't have the operation. So it was always a very interesting and close relationship with quite a few customers, and during Corona it was just the same.
That's interesting. So it actually kind of stayed still around that close relationship. One thing I like to talk about is a little bit the work practices. And with you, it's funny because it feels like in the beginning you were just in fire mode. You probably still feel like you're in firefighting mode still, but you're working from the Black Forest and your team is in Berlin. And in the meantime, you've hired another 7 people and counting. What lessons can you share from this process? Are there things you started doing that you didn't do before because you were just a small team? And are there things that you used to do and you're like, this doesn't work anymore?
If you think about working from home, definitely for me, it showed me that I can definitely work from home and that I just have to be here when there's something to coordinate or when my right hand isn't here. Yeah. And the same for her. So it's kind of either myself or her being here. But of course, in production, you just have to be physically here doing the production or baking. I mean, you have to be here for baking. Yeah. So you cannot do a home office then. So this is, of course, a challenge in case there's another lockdown, because we need the people here to produce. On the other hand, there's no major change because of Corona in the way I would create or do the business.
I know, and you've mentioned a bit of this, there are a lot of businesses struggling out there, but also people looking for, some stories of optimism, and you've brought a bit of optimism already. Crisis can be tough, and you have the danger of, if we're going to lockdown, you kind of lose the people, but they can also be a huge opportunity because it teaches you new ways of working, or it forces you to change. Not only do you have this distribution agreement, but you also have lots of different ideas of products that you want to do and new things you want to create. Can you talk a bit of how you see it going forward?
There's definitely there's some few interesting products coming out, which we've already analyzed and everything. And we're working with a lot of hemp seeds at the moment. So it's gluten-free and low carb, extremely healthy. But I think a really, really big unlock for the business will, on top of the baking mixtures, be frozen products. So I've had a conference call with a bakery who are producing frozen products. So the first goal will be to sell the bread rolls and the bread as a frozen product, because there's still quite a few people out there, even though it seems to be easy. Put in the mixture, add the water, make your little ball, let it grow, put it in the oven, that's it. There's still quite a few people who are not able to bake, or who don't have the time or don't want to. So I think this is a huge unlock for the business. Also, I had quite a few restaurants and hotels asking me if they can somehow get this gluten-free bread of mine. And I said to them, listen, no, we're only selling as a baking mixture, but of course, if it would be a frozen product, then they could also have it there. And this would be just a massive market opening on top of the current one.
Yeah, and you mentioned to me before that you have the mixture, but you also have some of them that are already done, like the cookies. Other products like that, and plans to expand on that one?
No. In fact, there's no other baked products yet. That's what I want to do with this bakery. I will not want to do this in-house. I would like to outsource this. I will only keep the recipe and the mixtures in-house. So we would just send the huge quantities of mixture to the bakery, and they would bake and pack and do the rest of it.
And one final point on the business before we go and talk more about the Black Forest. Knowing what you know today, would you give yourself different advice if you had the benefit of going back 6 months? What learning do you think you had?
That's a difficult question. I think I would do it all again, as I did, because I think we're getting to the more private part. I mean, already before, but even more during Corona, I just did what my gut told me, and it just reconfirms that that's the right way to go.
Your advice would still hold. It would be go with your gut.
Yes, definitely.
So, Constanze, if you don't mind, let's talk a bit about your home, right? You're a high-performing entrepreneur. You're in the midst of a huge phase of growth, but as you said, you're the mom of 3 boys. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Definitely.
Yeah. So, originally I told the audience you were in Berlin, but after all, you were not there. So can you talk a bit more about, when lockdown started, you're in your holiday home, what happened with schooling, with working from home, and with all the family around?
Well, luckily I didn't have any children in school yet. They were all the nursery boys, all 3. So 3 in 3 years is tough, but in this case, I was really lucky that they were still very small. But working from home with my husband actually also having to work from home was impossible. So when we came back to Berlin, actually, we very soon left our penthouse, although it wasn't that warm yet, but we went to our holiday home. We have a home here on an island in Berlin, actually. So there's lots of lakes here in Berlin, and we have one on an island. We've put on the heating with a fireplace, and we just decided to stay there because it was just too crazy at home inside with the boys. No, it was not good. They tore down the curtain in their playroom, and it was not good. So we went to the island, which was great because they have a huge outdoor space where they could play. And I decided for myself, okay, I have to give the priority to my husband because he is my only investor. So if my investor doesn't get any money in, I can close down my company. And I decided to only do the most important things, follow my gut again, only important stuff, phone calls, coordinating, but nothing no crazy new things during that period, and concentrating on being a mother, actually. And it was really, really nice. I mean, as a family, we've never ever spent so much time together, because usually my husband is on the plane every week, and I'm alone with the kids plus our au pair girl. And now it was just family time, which was amazing.
It's very interesting you say that choice, because I was actually reading this report from McKinsey today on the impact of COVID on gender inequality. And it's a huge impact. So women jobs are 1.8 times more likely to be at risk than male jobs. But actually part of that is because of female entrepreneurs and the fact that a lot of them kind of do the choice that you've done. The husband's the investor, or there's a difference in income, and they say kind of, okay, we'll go with that, and kind of one of the business falls. Luckily, yours went in the opposite direction, which is what we're trying to show here, that it's possible to go that way. So, you mentioned about working from home, and you found out that it was possible, and you say that you tried to reduce it to the minimal, but minimal with 3 boys and home and everything there, it's still hard to stay productive. Do you have any tips of how you tried to stay the moments that you wanted to focus, that you stayed focused and productive?
I actually explained my boys that there's always a certain time during the day, or there's moments that I have to work. That is really important for mommy, and that I will go to the boat's house to be alone whilst they can play in the garden or wherever. And actually, they really understood. So it was at some point, I mean, it didn't always work, of course, but at some point it was like, okay, mommy, do you have to work again? Do we have to be quiet? And so it does work. I think you just have to talk to your children and explain to them what the situation is. And even if they're only 3, 5, and 6, like in my case, they do understand more than you think.
Yeah, or maybe at some point they were actually trying to do all the things you don't let them do while you were working.
Oh, of course.
There's also a possibility that was the reason.
Climbing on a tree very high up.
Exactly. Constanze, mental health is something that is very close to my heart, and I do tend to bring it always to the podcast. This has been a tough time for a lot of people that were personally isolated, people that were with families and maybe, didn't have such understanding boys as you did. I think there's been a multitude of problems everywhere. Can you share any tips that you may have on how did you manage yourself and your mental health throughout this time?
I really think, it's something I learned from Corona, and that I want to continue. And it's funny because if I think back to my career at Burberry, Angela Arendt used to be the CEO, and she always used to say the same. She said she has 3 jobs: her husband, her kids, and her job. And I totally agree. When you're with them, you have to focus on your job number 1, job number 2, and job number 3. And if you can manage to do this and do the timing accordingly and be really focused when it's time to be with your kids, then you can stay calm, and they are calm as well and happy.
But staying calm, I think it's been brought up before at the podcast. I think the most used word by the amazing women I brought here that were mothers was patience. I like the way you refer to it as calm, so I'll use that one instead. Because if you could pick one, and I'm sure there are a ton of them, what was your biggest challenge this crisis has brought you?
Yeah, really, the job and the kids and the husband. This was the biggest challenge, to coordinate that all. And of course, cooking. I have a huge expectation on food, and food is really important to me, not only on a taste level, but also health-wise. And so I felt like I'm in kitchen all day long.
And when you're not in your kitchen, you're in your factory's kitchen. So you go between kitchens. So we all had things we liked and that we didn't like as much about this lockdown. But this is a podcast about growth and about opportunities. And you already started saying that for you, it was a really good time as a family. Did you start any new things? What grew in the family that wouldn't have been possible without this crisis?
I wouldn't say we started any new things, but I realized, and my mother told me that when she, after a long time, of course, saw the kids, that they were also really calm. I have to use that word again. But it felt like they were growing on a personal level as well. And I think it was really, really good for them to have this intense time with their parents. And the same for us. It made us grow as a family closer, actually, because we were not running around every day or being absent. So it was really the longest holiday ever, Corona holiday.
I hope we will remember it as a holiday in the future, or at least the kids will. Probably.
Yeah. Definitely.
So let's end the podcast on a light note and with a few recommendations. It's a bit of a lightning round, and so just shoot the first answer that comes to mind, and we'll do it like that. So, what was your favorite lockdown book?
Oh my God, really bad question. I was so dead in the end of the day. I couldn't even read.
So someone has brought a children book to the podcast.
Oh yeah, okay. I forgot the kids book. It's true. There's a German one I can recommend, but I don't know if it exists in English. But was reading it as a child, and I read it for the first time to my kids, and it's called The Old House. And there's this grandmother who tells the kids every day a different fantasy story, and it's a really, really lovely book.
We'll look for it in English and put it on the show notes. What's your favorite lockdown sport?
My favorite lockdown sport, swimming, because we were at the lake and the weather was great.
And lockdown technology?
My phone.
So what was your lockdown greatest lesson?
To remember that I shouldn't scream, that I should keep calm.
And if you had one word to describe lockdown, what would that be?
Corona holiday. It's 2 words.
It's okay. I think everyone's tried 2 words or more with this one. Constanze, thank you so much. It has been great to talk to you today and have you in the podcast. I appreciate you sharing all this with us, and I hope to see lots and lots of growth, and hopefully you getting to London soon.
Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation today. I loved finding out about how Constanze ended up managing exponential growth in her holiday home from the Black Forest. The last 6 months have been an explosion for her at gluten-frei Heimat, and she is still growing. On the home front, I'm still to find out how to follow her lead in convincing my children when it is time to work and no noise can be made. Connect with me and tell me what your biggest takeaways were. As I said, this is our very first season, so your support would be great. Please rate us and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. You can read more at makespaceforgrowth.com and join our community to access our free newsletter and Facebook group. Please share your thoughts and questions on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. I will add the links to the show notes. It has been a pleasure bringing this fireside chat to you. I am grateful you are there. I get to do this.